All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sean here at Zyxel. This is our monthly new partner introduction webinar. So this is a webinar where I'm going to go through and sort of provide a high-level overview of who Zyxel is, what we stand for, and what our most popular products here are in the Zyxel networking space. So as we go through today, feel free to send in questions. I'd prefer they come in using the question and answer part of the Zoom interface. But I think they've rearranged the Zoom interface recently, so chat works as well. So if you have any questions, send them in. Depending on what they are, I may answer it in real time, or I may wait till the end of today's webinar. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So Zyxel, who are we? I know we are not a household brand like some other networking providers, but we have been doing this for over 35 years. Making computer networking equipment. We got started in the early days of dial-up bulletin board systems and dial-up ISPs as part of that big race in the early days for 9600, 19.2, 2400 baud modems and that stuff back then, 33.6. And we've been at it ever since. Now, the reason you don't often hear about us is because we have primarily been, at least in North America, targeting the service provider space. So selling to big names, big, large ISPs, and oftentimes acting as the OEM for the boxes that they deploy. But we have also been doing standard channel networking equipment for almost all this time as well. We serve 150 different global markets. We have over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. Now, we are a global company, and when it comes to sales, the bulk of our sales in this sort of SMB networking space that most of us are participating in comes out of our European offices, where we've got offices in many different countries there. In North America, for the US and Canada, our headquarters is located in Anaheim, California. So that's where our sales team is, that's where our primary warehouse is, it's where I'm at and it's where our tech support is. So that's one nice thing with Zyxel. We do provide free phone support for our products. And as long as you call in during West Coast business hours, you are talking to a Zyxel employee based out of Southern California. We don't outsource the tech support to a third party. It's not going over to the Philippines or something like that. You are talking to us here. Now, if you do call out of hours, it may get rerouted to Germany, our German tech support hub, or I think we also sometimes will defer to Taiwan. But during business hours, it is our US office here that's handling tech support. So Zyxel Networks is who I work for, and that's who you're dealing with here today. We are part of the Zyxel group. So I do want to sort of highlight this here for you. So I am part of Zyxel Networks, and that's where our focus is on SMB networking for the most part. So switches, access points, security firewalls, things like that. We do have a sister company called Zyxel Communications, and their primary focus is on the ISP space. So they're the guys who are primarily selling you know, DSL, CPE, TR069 managed routers and things like that. Now, we do operate in the US here out of the same building, and we do have access to their products. So there's a little bleed over between the two groups. It's not always a clear cut line, who you should be talking to, especially for like a small ISP or something like that. So something to keep in mind. MitraStar is our manufacturing arm. So that's our factory and design team that we work with. They're part of the Zyxel group. They are based out of Taiwan, although they do have manufacturing facilities in mainland China as well. So to sort of summarize that, as a general rule, if you're looking for ISP stuff, Zyxel Communications helps you out. If you're looking for business networking and building networking, Zyxel Networks is who you're talking to. And our vision is primarily here to try to provide high quality products, advanced products, and making them affordable. So, we were one of the very first to ship a Wi-Fi 7 tri-band, tri-radio access point aimed at the SMB space. We currently have the cheapest Wi-Fi 7 BE 11,000 class access point on the market. So you're getting the prices there. You're getting product time to market very quick, and you get high quality. Our products have a very low return rate, generally less than 2% over the life of the product. So let's start talking about some of the products here. Um, So these are our main categories, right, that we're talking about here. We have switches, access points, and our security firewall line of products. Those are our three main categories. We've got some other stuff in there, but those are the main areas for us. Now, these are all tied together with something that we call Nebula. So again, going to that idea of providing advanced solutions, we were the first company to launch a full stack cloud management platform for the SMB space. So we launched our Nebula cloud management platform all the way back in 2016. So 8 years ago, we were the first to get into this space to create a lineup where you could go to a simple web page, nebula.zyxel.com, log in, see your customers, see their networks, and be able to manage your Zyxel switches, your Zyxel access points, and your Zyxel gateways all through that one single pane of glass. Otherwise, at that time, your solutions were aimed at the enterprise, things like Cisco's Meraki, um, uh, Arrowhive, things like that. Not really aimed at the SMB space. So, just to give you a little high-level overview here on Nebula, Nebula provides unified and centralized control and visibility of all your customers' networks and all your customers. There's no software or hardware controllers needed. So you don't have to buy a cloud key. You don't have to be running a certain gateway. You don't have to install special server software in your cloud or, run a virtual machine on a computer in the building. The whole ability to do Nebula is built into our hardware itself. And the cloud key or cloud controller is hosted by us for free in the cloud using Amazon AWS servers. So any of our equipment, you want to manage it in the cloud, it's really simple. You plug it in and it's just going to work. You don't have to tell the device that you're going to put it into cloud mode. You don't have to point it at a certain server somewhere. It's just plug and play. So the core of that is our Nebula Control Center. That's where you go to when you log in with nebula.zyxel.com, and you'll find an interface that's been designed from the ground up all the way back in 2016 to make it easy to find different customers, different networks those customers may be running, and dig in to see what's going on or to make configuration changes or whatever else it needs to be. So setting up Nebula for most products is pretty simple. Log into Nebula, create a customer, create one or more sites for that customer of yours, order some Zyxel products. Once you get the products, you just scan using our mobile app a QR code that's usually found on the outside of the box or on the belly label of the product. You assign those devices to your customer, and then you go ahead and install that hardware. As soon as you plug in that hardware, it boots up. It will check the cloud. It will see you want to manage it in Nebula, and it will automatically put itself into cloud mode, download any configurations you've already done, as well as update the firmware to the latest versions. And from that point on, you can manage everything there. At no point should you need to log in and do anything locally to the equipment itself. So in a lot of cases, you can avoid even doing truck rolls or sending somebody out to the customer location. You simply have the product shipped to you, you scan them and ship them to your customers. And between the time when you ship them out and when they get arrived at the customer location, you can do all of your configuration, even when the device is offline. So primarily Nebula management is done through a web interface. So anywhere you have a web browser and an internet connection, you have access to your customers and all of the features of your products. We do also have our mobile app. And the mobile app is not designed as being the primary tool to use to manage your customers' networks. It's there to scan those QR codes. So there's a special like admin level that's just installers that allows people to scan and add hardware as they deploy it. It gives you an overhead view of what's going on the site, if any devices are offline, push notifications, and some basic troubleshooting and configuration. But it is not the primary interface because our networking equipment offers a lot of really complex stuff, and it's just not feasible to do some of the more complex configuration through a mobile app. So as I mentioned earlier, no additional hardware or software. Nebula just works, and Nebula is free. So when we first launched Nebula, it was done the Cisco Meraki way. If you wanted to manage something in the cloud, you bought the Meraki hardware, or in our case, Nebula. If you wanted to do traditional management, you bought a separate line of products. So we have essentially gotten away from that. Just about everything we sell today is what we call Nebula Flex, meaning that our hardware can be used your traditional standalone management or can be used in the Nebula cloud. It's your choice based on your customers' preferences or your preferences, which you want to do. It's really easy to put your hardware into cloud mode. Again, you just scan that QR code, assign the device to a customer on a site, and within a few minutes, it'll see that you want to manage it in the cloud. It will reboot into cloud mode and download its configuration. If at any point you want to convert that device back to a standalone managed device, you simply remove it from the Nebula cloud and it will automatically reboot and factory reset itself into standalone mode. Now, Nebula is free. There are no limits to the number of customers you can manage, numbers of sites you can manage, or how many devices you can manage in the free version of Nebula. We do, though, offer some additional licensing levels that unlock additional features, primarily aimed at those of you that are providing MSP type services or want access to our artificial intelligence that can do some automated troubleshooting and connections. So base pack is free. Plus pack is sort of designed to compete with those sort of lower end cloud offerings from people like Netgear. And then Pro Pack is our high level additional platform there. So just to give you some rough ideas here, base pack gives you 5 admins per customer. Pro Pack gives you an unlimited number of admin accounts per customer. Free version keeps a week's worth of logs in the cloud. The pro version keeps a year's worth of logs in the cloud. The pro version gives you access to our artificial intelligence. It gives you access to some advanced firmware scheduling. So the free version has firmware update scheduling. ProPack gives you advanced firmware update scheduling. ProPack gives you access to an automatic topology view. It has a 1-year change log, so you can always monitor and check who made configuration changes. So you don't have to use ProPack. You don't have to use Plus. You can use free, whatever you want. And at any point, if for some reason you were using Pro and you decide to let it lapse, it simply falls back to the free version of Nebula. At no point do you get locked out of your hardware or the ability to configure your hardware. And then lastly, we have something here called MSP Pack. So MSP Pack is a user license that unlocks some additional MSP type features on a per user basis. So you would buy that license for whichever admin needs access to them. Generally, it's just going to be 1 or 2, your head guys who have access to this. And it unlocks some features like the ability to create teams and assign admin teams or change who's in that team to make it a little bit easier to control admin access when you've got a large number of admin users. It gives you push notifications for all levels of Zyxel customer or Nebula customer that you're using, etc. And we do have a dedicated Nebula webinar where we talk a little bit more in depth about this if you're interested. So when it comes to our products here, you will see our products labeled as either Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex means you can use the device in cloud or standalone mode. Nebula Flex Pro means you can use the device in standalone or cloud mode, but it comes bundled with a 1-year Pro Pack license. So if you're going to be using Pro Pack, you may want to make the upgrade to one of the Pro Pack ones just so that license already bundled and attached to the device when you plug it in, so you don't have to buy the licenses separately. Now, if you don't want to use cloud, of course, all of our devices can still be managed on premises using SNMP, SSH, built-in web GUIs on the product, etc. Our USG Flex, USG Flex H series and ATP series have a built-in wireless LAN controller that works with our W series access points. So if you're looking for a local area controller for managing your wireless access points, you can absolutely do that too. So we'll go ahead and move on and start talking about our different product lines. So we'll start by talking about our wireless LAN portfolio. So we've sort of grouped the APs here into a couple different categories: simplicity, flexibility, and ultimate. And that's just sort of to give you some rough guidelines on which market they're aimed at. So on the low end of things, we have our NWA 50 and 90 series access points. Today, these are all Wi-Fi 6 devices, and these are aimed at the Soho space. So these come with a 2-year warranty, and they may be missing some business features such as AP load balancing that you would want to use in a proper business network. But they're perfectly acceptable devices to use in the home, to use in a small office with a small number of APs or where you don't have a large number of users. And then our NWA 55AXE is going to be a super cheap outdoor IP55, I think, rated access point to provide coverage outdoors or to be able to use it in point-to-point or point-to-multi-point links to bridge buildings together, for instance. The flexibility series is where our true SMB product starts. This is the NWA series with a star that's basically 100 and higher. So anything NWA 100 and higher is going to have the full access to the full business class feature sets you would expect. Um, they come with a lifetime warranty. So they're designed and built to last a really long time. And these are available in Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, and Wi-Fi 7 configurations. And then our ultimate series are going to be all of the access points that start with the letter W. So the letter W there is basically indicating these are our high-end products. So these all come bundled with Nebula Flex Pro. And these are the APs you would want if you want to use a local area controller instead of the cloud. So if you want to use that built-in local wireless LAN controller that's part of our USG Flex series, you would need to pair those with our W series access points. So think of them as a tri-mode, standalone access point, cloud managed access point, or local area controller access point. And then these models also have access to some of our different antenna technologies. And we'll talk about that here in a future slide. But if you need some of those advanced antenna technologies, those are generally part of the W series, as well as our specialty APs like our wall plate hospitality APs here, the 500 and 300 series. So one of the areas that makes us a little bit different from our competition is we do have different antenna technologies you can find in our access points. Most of our competitors are only offering simple static antennas. Essentially, they've got either a omnidirectional antenna or a directional antenna built into the access point. It's designed usually as an omnidirectional to be mounted directly over the area where you're going to be covered and provide sort of an umbrella coverage pattern that radiates out. That's what, 90% of the access points out there have. We also offer what are called dual optimized antennas and smart antenna, and we'll talk about those here in these next slides. So to begin with, here's what you generally see, right? You place your access point on the ceiling, it covers the area underneath it. Unfortunately, out in the real world, you don't always get that flexibility of being able to mount your APs there. Oftentimes, you have to end up mounting the AP on a wall where the antenna pattern is rotated 90 degrees from what it's been optimized for at the factory. So you end up sending signal up into the ceiling, down into the floor. So you don't get the horizontal coverage that you maybe would want. And if you're in a multi-floor building, you may start causing interference issues between the floors, especially if you mounted the access points in the same location on each floor. So our solution to this is the dual optimized antenna. Basically, we give you two sets of antennas, one set that's optimized for ceiling, one set that's optimized for wall. And we let you choose on a per AP and per radio basis which configuration you want to use. So if you mount the AP on the ceiling, you can choose ceiling mount. If you mount the AP on the wall, you can choose wall mount. And sometimes there may be situations where you want to use one or the other, not actually corresponding to the physical relationship, just based on the RF characteristics of the area you are in. And then lastly, we have our smart antenna technology, something we've been offering for a number of years now. It's really been highly rated by just about every reviewer that's put it through its paces. And what this does is instead of having, your traditional single antenna pattern, we have here an array of antennas that are able to produce hundreds of different antenna pattern combinations. So the only thing that's really like this out there, it's similar to this, is going to be Ruckus's BeamFlex Plus. So if you're familiar with Ruckus and their BeamFlex Plus technology, this is a similar technology where we use an array to choose from hundreds of antenna patterns. Now, the algorithm that we use optimizes based on where the client device is in relationship to the access point, but it also takes into account other sources of RF interference operating on the same channel. So on the slide, they show a microwave, but this can be other access points. This can be industrial equipment. This can be other non-Wi-Fi wireless devices that are sharing that spectrum. It doesn't matter. This technology works with any client, doesn't require anything special on the client side. It's all handled by the access point. And unlike beamforming, this is able to work with mobile clients. So it's able to optimize and keep twisting and changing the antenna patterns based on where the client device is moving to. So with this, it's really helpful in environments that are really RF tough, primarily areas where you've got a lot of interference, either from neighbors who have high-powered access points, or just in dense environments where you've either got a lot of users, like a school or an expo hall or a concert venue, or you've got a lot of access points spread out in the same area and there's a lot of overlap. With smart antenna technology, you can actually achieve, such as in a hotel environment where each room has their own AP, you can get up to the point where a certain channel is able to offer more than 100% airtime utilization. With 3 APs running, we can get up to 150% airtime utilization, where standard antennas will be stuck generally around 95 to 97% airtime utilization. That's because smart antenna technology allows multiple APs to use the same channel at the same time without interfering with each other. So when you look at our access points, we build our access points differently. If you've ever been to one of our trade shows, you may have seen it where we had our access point and we have some of our competitors' access points, and we have them opened up so you can pick them up and look at them. So we've got two things going on there. One is longevity, right? All of our business class or SMB and up access points have a lifetime warranty. And we are able to offer that in part because of how we've designed these. These are solid state components. So one of the number one causes of failure of a solid state device is capacitors failing. So we do not use any electrolytic capacitors in our access points. We only use solid state capacitors. So these last longer, they don't leak, they don't blow up, they don't dry out. So that's one thing we do differently to help be able to offer a lifetime warranty on even a cheap, $150 access point. The other thing we do is we optimize based on heat. That's probably the second leading cause of failure in solid state components is heat fatigue. If the chips themselves run too hot for too long, the individual little micro switches inside the chips can fail. You also have problems with solder joints flexing and failing. So what you will find on our access points is almost all of them are going to have a large metal heat sink behind the main PCBA, and the housing itself will have lots of heat vents to allow heat out. So the heat sink draws the heat off the components on the board, and then they're vented out. If you look at some of our cheaper competitors, many of them not only do they not have a heat sink, they don't even have vent holes out the back, and some of our more expensive competitors don't even bother with the heat sink. So that's why when you pick up our access points, you will find that they weigh a lot more than our competitors offering similar specs on paper. The other thing we do differently is what we call an RF first design philosophy. So basically, our designs are designed to optimize the RF environment in the device. So what that means for you is we generally put additional shielding for EMI on the board above and beyond most of our competitors do to provide that little better isolation between the Wi-Fi chips and any EMI coming off the other chips on the board. The other thing we do is we add in a 4G and 5G filtering. So you may not be aware of this, but 4G and 5G can use channels which border the channels used by Wi-Fi. And if that signal is strong, it can bleed over into the Wi-Fi space. So generally, if you're just doing a small building or a house, this isn't an issue. But if you're deploying access points in an office building, oftentimes those cellular signals can't penetrate very far into the building. So most large buildings deploy what's called a DAS system, DAS, and it distributes cellular signal and basically rebroadcasts it inside the building. And oftentimes the drops that are being used to provide the cellular access points, we'll call them, are shared by what the same drops you're using for your Wi-Fi access points. So you can end up in situations where you have 4G and 5G on a neighboring channel being broadcast just a few feet away from where you've got your access point. And our filtering helps you in those type of environments. The other thing that we do differently is we don't mount our antennas directly to the main PCBA. Even our more expensive competitors generally do this. Instead, we have a separate board, and there's usually some sort of a noise shield between that board and the main board that we mount our antennas onto. So what this does is this doesn't make much difference when you've got a good strong signal, but it makes a huge difference when you've got those users right on the edge of a difference between a good connection and a bad connection, allowing you to have a reliable, steady connection even on those marginal edges. So moving on from access points to our switches. Um, and hold on just a second. Okay, I got my slides out of order. This is on me, my bad. Give me just a second. Um, So we're going to start talking about our switching portfolio lineup here. So we'll start talking about our switches. So to begin with here, these are our unmanaged desktop switches. So these are unmanaged, they're desktop. These are more of your consumer or Soho level switches. So I just wanted to show we've got quite a big lineup of products here. We'd phased out the simple desktop GS 105B and 108B a while back, but we're getting ready in Q1 of this year to launch a new small 5 and 8 port ultra compact desktop switches. And then we go up from there to PoE switches, multi-gig switches, multi-gig switches with 10 gig backhaul, and lightweight web managed switches. So these are your switches that have a very basic web interface. And all of these switches, with the exception of the very small desktop here, do come with a lifetime warranty. Moving up here into our business class switches, that will be the 1000 series and higher. So at the bottom here, we've got our 1000 series unmanaged switches. We jump up to our 1900 series, which gives us sort of our layer 2 managed switch. And then when it comes to cloud management, from the 1915 series up here to the 3800 series, these can all be web or can be Nebula managed, as well as just using the standard built-in web GUI. And anything from the 2000 series and up also has a complete and full lineup for command line management. For those guys that like to do it old school or write scripts, 2000 series and higher are what you are looking at. And basically, as a general rule, as the numbers get bigger, the more features that are available on the switch. So everything from 1900 and up is considered a layer 2 switch with web management. And again, as you get that bigger here, you start to get to, layer 2 plus or layer 3 light. Different companies brand the feature sets a little bit differently. But 1915 and higher for anything that's using Nebula web management. We do also have here our 1350 series switches. Now, these are a specialty switch that were designed for those of you doing IP camera deployments because there's some unique feature sets that we had gotten requests from our partners. So we created a whole switch series just for those of you. Although for those that aren't doing it, there may be some of these new features that may be usable in other applications. So one of the things the 1350 series can do is it can exceed the 100-meter limit for PoE and Ethernet and extend it out to, I think, 300 meters. And it works no matter what is the client on the other side. So you can provide extended data and PoE connections that you can't normally do on a standard switch. These switches also have the ability to monitor connected devices. And if those devices become non-responsive, you can automatically power cycle the device to reboot it and get it back online. And they also have the ability to maintain PoE power even during a reboot of the switch. So if for some reason the switch needs to be rebooted, the connected PoE devices do not need to be rebooted. They will stay online and start transmitting data as soon as the switch is back up. So our switch feature highlights here, again, almost all of these switches, 1915 and higher, are Nebula Flex, meaning you can use them managed or standalone mode. We go all the way up to full layer 3 switches. We have comprehensive PoE offerings in all different sizes. So anything from a small desktop switch that can power up a couple APs to something which can power up an entire building of Wi-Fi 7 APs. Our switches are running an operating system here, at least our 1915 and higher, and I think 1900 and higher are running Zynos. So Zynos is an operating system we developed in-house. So why am I highlighting this? Um, this is an area where we do something different from many of our competition in the similar space, is that most of our competition are buying switches and they're not always buying them. The chipsets inside can be coming from different vendors, right? You can be getting Realtek or Broadcom, MediaTek, whatever it happens to be. And each of those vendors of chipsets generally has their own interface design, their own language terms, and things like that. So, some of our competitors, when you buy a switch and you buy a different switch from a different product line, features may be named differently, they may be configured differently, et cetera, because those vendors are basically taking the SDK from the chipset vendor and just giving it a facelift. In our case, we are using our own operating system. So that way we can maintain a consistent, not just a GUI, but consistent naming, consistent configuration options. So as you move from switch to switch, from series to series, you're getting a unified interface, both in the web GUI and in the command line and in the MIBs for SNMP. And our business class switches are built to last, right? We've got really good thermal design to make sure we don't have those heat fatigue issues I talked about earlier on our access points. We have the solid state capacitors on there. We've got extra power noise filtering to make sure interference isn't coming in through the power. And we've got a patented SFP design that allows us to oftentimes be able to remotely recover SFP ports when those get locked up, the SFP module gets locked up without having to send someone on site. So when it comes to Ethernet switches, we often get questions, as we're getting to now into the age of multi-gig, is, when do I need to upgrade the cables at my customer's location to be able to take advantage of these new faster speeds? So this is just a chart showing you here. Basically, if your customer has Cat 5e, you can deploy up to 5 gigabit per second Ethernet on that existing Cat 5e. It will not support consistent 10 gig connections. Cat 6 will do 10 gig connections, but the range is going to be limited. If you get above about 50 meters, it'll fall back to just 5 gigs. And then if you're running Cat 6A, you can provide 10 gig service up to 100 meters. In addition, there's the new PoE standards, right? There used to be just PoE, and there was PoE plus. Now there's PoE plus plus, as more and more devices are being powered off of PoE, more powerful devices. So basically, Cat 5e and up can all support the standards for up to 60 watt PoE plus plus power. So when you're looking at our switches here, there's 3 different standards for PoE. There's standard PoE, 802.3 AF, PoE plus, 802.3 AT, and PoE plus plus, which is 802.3 BT. And the primary differences between these are the power outputs. Standard PoE can provide up to 15.4 watts of power per port, PoE plus up to 30 watts of power per port, and PoE plus plus up to 60 watts of power. So most devices these days need PoE plus. As far as like access points and cameras go, things like desktop phones are generally standard PoE. And then PoE plus plus, you're now seeing this for the faster Wi-Fi 7 access points. Those that are running basically 3 radios with an aggregated data rate of over 10 gigs per second usually need PoE plus plus. So in our case here at Zyxel, that's our WBE 660S and the WBE 640S-6E. Although our Wi-Fi 7 tri-radio NWA 130BE and the WBE 530, they both run off of the 30 watt PoE. So when it comes to our switches, as you saw, we have a lot of different families, and each of those families have a lot of different models. So I wanted to highlight here just some of our naming rules. So when you're skimming through, our catalog and the price list file that gets sent to you every month, or you're browsing at distribution, you can tell just by looking at the model what sort of features are offered by the device. So to begin with, we have a prefix. So if the prefix starts with ES, and in North America, you're not going to find any of these. Those are switches that all ports support a 100 meg connection. We have a RG model, and what that's telling you is the R is for rugged, the G is for gigabit. So it's a rugged gigabit switch. GS, G for gigabit, S for switch. So this is a switch where all ports are 1 gig ports. And of course, obviously backwards compatible with slower speeds. Our MG series are switches where all ports are multi-gig, usually 2.5G. XGS, the X is for 10, G is for gigabit. So these are switches where most ports are 1 gig, but there are 10 gig uplink ports on the switch. And then our XMG, most ports are multi-gig, 2.5 or 5 gig, but there are 10 gig uplinks. So if you know, like you're deploying some access points, you may need to go up to an XMG here. So you've got 5 gig for those new Wi-Fi 7 or 6E access points, and then 10 gig to be able to provide the uplinks back to the main switch. And then our XS series here, where all of the ports are 10 gig or faster. And then we have a number of suffixes that you can find on our models. So HP is telling you it provides PoE plus or PoE plus plus. EP is generally PoE plus or PoE plus plus, but with a lower overall power budget. So same amount of power per port, but less total ports that you could power up at the same time. So this is our way of giving you an inexpensive switch that can save you money so you're not paying for the extra PoE power that you don't need. And then FP stands for full power. So these are switches with a really large PoE budget. So you can provide power to a lot of devices at PoE++, for instance. And then F is going to tell you that's a fiber switch. All ports are fiber. So by combining these with the model numbers, the 1915, 1920, 2220, you can pretty quickly dial in which features each switch offers. Now, in addition to the switches, we do also sell our own SFP modules, 1 gig, 10 gig, as well as DAC cables for those of you doing direct stacking. So those are there. We don't lock you into our modules. So if you have another vendor modules you like, you're more than welcome to try to use them. Generally, it works pretty well. But if you want to, rule out anything, use ours. So when it comes to multi-gig, again, this is an area that's really growing. So I wanted to show here just how many different series and models of switches we're offering today, which provide multi-gig services and 10 gig uplinks. So you can see everything from cheap, inexpensive desktop unmanaged switches all the way up to a layer 3 aggregation switch, and everything in between. And our sales guys can help you figure out what you need for your customer. That's probably a biggest takeaway here. You are here because you're probably a Zyxel partner. So you have a dedicated salesperson, Jacob, Andy, or David. Use those guys, use their knowledge. They can help you narrow down the products and figure out what you need. We do also have a sales engineer that's available for you, that they can loop in when needed on those more complex situations. And then again, when it comes to PoE, we've got a large number of switches that are providing either PoE plus or PoE plus plus for powering up those new high powered access points or some of those really high resolution pan tilt zoomed IP cameras. Now, for those of you in a situation where you're upgrading the access points, it's not a lot of access points. It's 3 or 5 or whatever, and you don't want to swap out entire large switches to be able to support them. We do sell PoE injectors that are multi-gig and provide up to 60 watts of power per port. So this is an alternative rather than upgrading existing switches. You can just add these in on the ports that need that new higher power PoE. So that is it for our switches. We'll now start talking about security. So our Zywall series is our high-end security products. So I want to talk about them. There's a couple different lines of products, and we've been going through a transition, and we will continue to go through this transition in 2025. So originally we had USG Flex, we had VPN, and we had ATP series. So 3 different series of security firewalls. Hardware was largely the same. The main difference was the software configuration. So we have phased out the VPN series, and we are in the process of phasing out the ATP series. So in place of the USG Flex series. So what we've basically done is we've taken the feature sets that were part of the ATP series or the feature sets that were part of the VPN series, and we've rolled them into the USG Flex with a license. So you can buy a standalone USG Flex security router and buy an ATP license to convert it into an ATP device. You can buy the license to add SD-WAN and convert it into a VPN device. So because of that, we don't need these different hardware models. So again, VPN has been phased out. ATP is in the process of being phased out, and some models may already be gone today. But all of those features have been rolled into the USG Flex series. And now we are also rolling out a new USG Flex H series. So the H series is the next generation of USG Flex. It is a new hardware platform and a new software platform designed to provide a huge performance boost to help deal with the fact that local area networking is getting faster, internet connections are getting faster, and security products need to be able to keep up and provide those UTM, services at these faster speeds. So the USG Flex series will H series will eventually replace the standard USG Flex series. The transition will hit really hard starting in 2025. The challenge we've had so far with this is because it's a new software and hardware platform, it's taking a little while to get all of the features in the USG Flex series ported into the H series. I think we're about 85 to 90% there, with 100% expected to be in the next couple months. So once that happens, you will see the regular USG Flex get replaced entirely by the H series. In addition to that, we launched in the last year and a half, we launched a new lightweight security series here that's designed to compete with security routers from like Ubiquiti or Netgear, that don't provide the true full UTM type features of a Zyxel USG Flex or a Sonic Wall or Fortinet, but need to provide better security than your traditional home router. So that's where the SCR series came in, and it is being rebranded to the USG Lite series. So at the moment, we've got one model that's SCR, one model that's USG Lite. Again, next year, the SCR model will be phased out, and the whole line will just become USG Lite. And I believe we've got one or two USG Lite models that we'll announce later next year, to start broadening that line of options. So it's a little bit confusing, and I do apologize for that, as we're going through these transitions, but it's going to become much more clear in 2025 and much more streamlined process when it comes to choosing your security gateway. But the short version is, if you just need something ultra lightweight, the USG Lite series, otherwise go up to the USG Flex. Those are providing VPN appliance, wireless LAN controller, hospitality gateway, standard UTM functionality, advanced threat protection functionality, etc. So those are sold as a bundle, either with licenses already bundled and ready to go, or sold as standalone hardware so you can buy which bundles you want. Now, an area where we do things differently from our competition is when it comes to those UTM services, the Unified Threat Management. Most of our competitors in this space, the big boys out there, Sonic Wall, Fortinet, etc., they do both the hardware, the software, and the security services. So our philosophy is what we're good at is hardware and software. We are not also a security company that's an expert in content filtering, that is an expert in sandboxing, that's an expert in zero-day exploits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what we do is we partner with third parties who are leaders in that space to provide that functionality to us. So depending on what the feature is that you're looking for, for instance, web filtering is provided by Trellix. Norton provides the sandboxing. Our cloud services are hosted by Amazon Web Services. The ability to identify connected devices is provided by Akami. Siren is providing our email security. We use Bitdefender when it comes to antivirus and malware, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we do a little bit differently here than some of our competition in this space. So I did want to highlight here, for many of our features, we do provide free trials of our security services. So, our content filtering comes with a 30-day free trial, secure Wi-Fi 30-day free trial, connect and protect 30-day trial. Our gold security license, that advanced threat protection UTM bundle, 30-day free trial. So make it easy for you to be able to test drive these things, learn how they work and play with them before you commit money to them. So just to hit here, and I'm going to go through these really fast. These are the features that are available primarily on our USG Flex series products. Web and content filtering, including encrypted web pages, application patrol, the ability to set access control rules in your firewall based on the application and the features of the application using a pull down menu. Email anti-spam, anti-malware, anti-virus protection, intrusion detection and prevention, collaborative detection and response, where the firewall works with the access points to provide additional LAN security services. Geo enforcer, do you need somebody from India accessing your network? If you don't, if you're not working with India, you can block that, China, Russia, other places where it's very common for threats and attacks to come from if you're not, supporting services to those countries. The ability to do sandboxing for zero-day exploits, a reputation filter, etc. And then when it comes to additional features here, so the gateways themselves, of course, are a firewall out of the box. They provide basic, firewall functionality there. We have the ability to do cloud management using Nebula, the ability to deploy single sign-on for your users, secure Wi-Fi, managed AP services, device high availability, SD-WAN, hotspot management, etc. So I'm including this slide in here because I thought this was kind of interesting. This was put together by IDC looking at market share. So in Europe, again, Europe is our biggest market. We are the third largest SMB security provider for security hardware under $1,000. So I thought that was kind of cool. When it comes to globally, we are top 5 for SMB security and devices that cost under $3,000 globally. So, again, here in the US, we don't have a lot of market share. We are not a household name, but we have been doing this for a long time and we do have decent market penetration elsewhere. So Zyxel here, everything is managed through your Zyxel account. So you create a Zyxel account, and that's where you go to manage your online licenses, to check which licenses for your customers may be coming up for expiration, etc., as well as also our reporting feature. So that sort of links everything together. So when it comes to network management, so we're moving kind of away from security now, kind of still there, kind of moving away. Talking about network management. So I've already talked about the Nebula Cloud, which is our cloud hosted management platform. We do also have something that we really don't talk about a lot here in North America, which is our on-premise networking management through what's called the Zyxel One Network. So if you're not using the Nebula Cloud, these are tools to make it easier for you to manage your Zyxel hardware on the network. So it's made up of a couple different things. Our APC technology, so this is the access point management platform that's built into our USG Flex hardware. Our zone utility, this is a piece of free software that you can download. And then Smart Connect, which is a protocol that our devices in local mode use to be able to find and communicate with each other. So these three things here combine to create the Zyxel One network, designed to just sort of make it easier for you to discover Zyxel hardware on your network, what IP addresses they have, which devices are plugged into which other devices, and provide some basic configuration, firmware update, backup management, to make it simplified and easier for you to do. I won't spend much more time talking about it. Now, as a new partner, we should let you know here that we do have an education center where we do have training available for you to learn how to use our products. It's available at educationcenter.zyxel.com. The lower levels are free. The higher levels are, in theory, something you pay for. Reach out to your sales guy as a Zyxel authorized partner. We can get you some of these additional trainings for free. We give you a coupon code that gets rid of the cost. So that's there for you as well. It's something people often ask about, and we don't do a good enough job, I think, promoting and letting people know that this is available to them as an anytime training service. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about here was buying licenses. So licenses are available through distribution. So if you're buying, doesn't matter if it's Target or Cinex or D&H or Wave, you can buy your licenses through them. And that is going to be probably where you're going to get the best prices on licensing. The downside is it can be kind of slow. Sometimes there's a day or two wait to get those licenses shipped out. So we do also offer an online marketplace where you can buy products. So when it comes to licenses, there is Marketplace and there is Circle. So Marketplace is where end users go to buy their licenses, where they're paying generally full MSRP. And it is integrated in with Nebula. So if you're looking to upgrade lots of different licenses in Nebula, you can go into Nebula, say you want to buy licenses, and it will spit out a list of which licenses you need. And then it can pass that through to Marketplace, or it can pass it through to Circle. So Circle is what you should be using if you are one of our partners. So you need to request Circle access. So reach out to your sales guy, let them know you need to sign up for Circle if you want to buy licenses online. You do get a bit of a partner discount, although again, generally the prices through Circle will be a little bit more expensive than if you bought through distribution, but it allows you to buy licenses instantaneously. And in many cases allows you to directly assign those licenses and apply them using just a quick, simple wizard. Um, so I did want to highlight that as far as what the different options are out there for you when you see that, because it does get a little confusion. You know, we get partners buying through Marketplace and paying way too much. So again, if you are a partner, get signed up in Circle. And then if you're buying licenses in Nebula, it's great. You can go in and say, hey, I need my licenses for this customer to expire in February of 2027. And it will tell you, okay, do you want to just do Nebula licenses? Do you also want to do the security licenses? You tell it, and it will spit out which licenses you need to be able to get everything to expire in the same month. And it will then pass that through a Circle to make it easier for you to buy those licenses and apply them. And with that, guys, that is the end of today's webinar. Um, so if you have any questions, now's the time to send them in. I'm not seeing any. I do want to highlight here our YouTube, because we're a global company. There's a lot of different Zyxel YouTubes. Ours for North America is Zyxel America channel. Most of our webinars are recorded and uploaded there within a day or two of the original broadcast date. But we also have video case studies there for you, commercials there, success stories, all sorts of other good stuff that you can find there. And then if you'd like to connect to us on LinkedIn, we are at Zyxel US channel. And while I continue to wait to see if any questions come in, we do have user forums. You can find them at forum.zyxel.com. It is usually the first place where security announcements, release notes, and things like that get posted. So it's a good tool to stay on top of what's going on, as well as a place where you can talk to other Zyxel installers and users. In addition to that, our teams in Taiwan, our product management and R&D teams, do monitor the forums to get an idea of, what problems people are having or what features, should be prioritized or suggestions to look at. And they do occasionally weigh in and answer questions there too, which is very different from many of the other user forums that are out there. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. I hope I see you at one of our future webinars. Thank you.